Now I've been using Hilleberg Niak for around 2 years, and I think it's time for me to make a review of this tent. My name is Matti. I'm working as a dog musher and nature guide up in northern Sweden. Together with my partner Stina, we run a small guide company just above the Arctic Circle in JOKKMOKK. Outdoor life is actually what we're doing for a living. And in this video I'm going to share my experience and my thought about Hilleberg Niak and the pros and the cons with this tent. One of the first things to say about Hilleberg as a brand is that they produce high-end products. And of course I have found some weak spots on this tent too. When we're talking about Hilleberg, we should know that it's a high-end product. It's a little bit more money when you buy it, but I will come back to the price a little bit later also. But it is a high-end product, and of course they make good stuff for sure. So let's pitch the tent, and then we're looking a little bit more into the details with the tent. So this tent comes with an extra pole, and it also comes with a short piece of tube that you can cover if something breaks down. So you can repair the poles twice if you want. When you have poles like this, you should not snap them. You put them together like this, and if you snap them, then you get small damage here on the tube, and then next time when you try to close it, it's a little bit more difficult. And when you close it, this must be closed. It shouldn't be something like this, closed. Because when you're bending the pole later on, if it's not closed, if it's like this, it cracks. Trust me, I have tried that too. And when you have put the poles out like this, then you should not walk around, because if you step on a pole, it's end of the life of the pole. You know. This bag with the pegs in the pocket. You should know where you have your gear. These bags, put them like this and put them away so they don't blowing away. There is a thing like this, plastic thing. Take the pole like this and the fabric, push the pole all the way to the bottom. Put the pole into the ground, and then you drag it like this and push the pole into it, and then with this one, ka-ching. So that was one, and then we have the second pole. I don't really know if this is how you should do it, but this is how I do it. Don't pull it out when you have started to put it in. Put it all the way in. Here it goes over the top. So, and into this, ka-ching. And here you can really see the advantage of a dome tent, because now when it's up, I can move it. Do I want the sunset here in the door? There is a stone here. Do I want the stone inside the tent, or could I move the tent so I'm not sleeping on the stone? And so on. Now I'm not going to sleep here tonight, so I just let it be like this. Then we take the pegs. You have loops down here for the pegs, and you have these guy lines, these ones. I think that these guy lines are super good when it's windy. It's very early in the summer right now, so the ground is actually frozen. The first thing I do is to put out the corners, and then I go for this one. The Hilleberg Niak and the other lightweight tents from Hilleberg comes with these tiny pegs, and they are good. But I prefer to take some of the bigger peg. Now I had some extra Hilleberg big pegs, so I have a couple of these extra big pegs. In case of that I need it. if you end up in a storm, you're never sitting there and thinking that you have enough with pegs or that the pegs are have the perfect size. You always want something bigger that keep your tent from not flying away. Here on the back side there is another guy line that keeps the fabric out from the inner tent. This one I really like. Of course it's super hard in the ground. I think it's totally frozen. So we had to, yeah, I don't know how we do this. Like that maybe. So here is also an extra attach point so that you can attach an extra guy line to this if you want. Open it like this. This tent is made as a Nordic style. When you put it up, the inner tent comes directly and it's connected here, hanging inside. So you don't pitch the inner first and then the flyer on top. When you pitch Scandinavian tents, everything pop up at the same time. It's not like the American ones when you pitch the inner and then the flyer. If we start looking at the fabric on the flyer here is definitely waterproof, and all the seams are made waterproof. You don't need to seam seal them and do things like that. Of course, after some years when you have used it a lot, you maybe had to do something on some certain spots on the tent, but for me it's really rare that I have to do anything like that. It's, as I said before, it's not like an American tent, and it's not the taped seams that start leaking after a while. So this is just sewed in a certain way. Go to Hilleberg's homepage and they describe exactly how they have done it and why the seams are not leaking. The inner tent have a mosquito net here with good ventilation, and then you have this other fabric here with ventilation also, but it's not blowing through it. And then you have like a tub on the bottom, so this goes up so high all around, and this is waterproof. I would say that you can camp in water and the water will not come through the floor. That's maybe happen after 10-15 years of use, or it depends on how much you use your tent, of course. But so I never hesitate to put this tent on branches, on pine cones, or even some stones and things like that. But I'm living in Scandinavia and the ground here is kind of very nice to the tent. If I was making my tours and camping in a more rocky terrain with more sharp stones, then I probably would have used another floor under this for protect this. But for this normal use in Scandinavia, mountain tours in Swedish mountains and so on, you can just keep it like this without the extra floor. And that's good because then you don't have to add up some extra weight on it. But we continue, open it and look inside. So as you see, you can't really close this. So you always have this kind of mosquito net ventilation. You can't really close it. But this is still more windproof than Big Agnes, for example, that have the whole inner tent made of mosquito net. So this is much more Scandinavian stylish tent. Now when I'm editing the video, there is one thing I want to add about the mesh inner tent. The good thing with the mesh inner tent is that the tent gets a little bit lighter and you get also more ventilation and more air circulation. And that's really nice during a warm summer day, a dry, warm summer day. The bad thing with the mesh inner tent is if you have a cold wind going through the tent, you get actually kind of chilly inside the tent. And I can see difference from the Big Agnes Tiger Wool that have a low thing around, and most of the fabric on the inner tent is mesh, or Big Agnes Copper Spur. Because Big Agnes Copper Spur have the fabric going up a little bit higher, and that's much warmer. And of course, Hilleberg with this yellow fabric, the whole tent, is much warmer than the Big Agnes tent. If you want, you can get this mesh inner tent to, I think, all Hilleberg tents, so you can buy it as an extra. Another bad thing with the mesh inner tent is the condensation, because you get the condensation on the flyer, And then if a wind shakes the tent, the drop, condensation drop, falling down and hit the mesh in the tent and give you a small shower inside the tent. And that's really not nice. So your gear can be wet and moistury. So it's much more dry with this real fabric in a tent instead of mesh in a tent. But like everything, pros and cons. This is a little bit more heavy and but more comfortable and warmer. I think I continue edit the video now so I can upload it soon. It comes with a small vestibule here, and I never hesitate to use a stove here if I'm really careful and if it's not windy. And so I cook my meal inside the tent, and of course you can take down the inner or pull it back a little bit and put the stove. You get a lot of space here actually. It's also good if you want to store a backpack, if you want to have some wet gear or something like that outside. But we come back to that a little bit later, also how you organize things in the tent. Here on the back side, here you also store hiking poles, a fishing rod, or if you have other kind of gear that you don't want to put inside the tent. So let's open up so we can see better. This is actually also an advantage of this tent. You can also open up it totally and get rid of the vestibule. And if you are a little bit creative, you can take a tarp and use it as an extra roof out here. I think that's really nice for canoe tours. And if you have campfire and you don't want the tent too close to the campfire, you just put a big tarp and then have the campfire on the other side of the tarp. And you can still close this so it's mosquito safe, but with the tarp during the summer you get really airy and very nice actually. My total length is 172 centimeters. I put it in feet here. And as you see, it's a lot of space here. I never reach the roof and I never feel that this is a small tent. If you look here, I'm more or less on the end here with my head, but then when you look here on my feet, it's almost 20 centimeter more until I reach the other side, 25 centimeter, almost 30 centimeter maybe. The Niak belongs to the yellow label, and that's Hilleberg's, the lightweight products they have. And then you have the red one that is something in the middle, and you have the black one that is heavy duty Arctic snowstorm stuff. And this yellow label comes in a lighter weight because it's lighter fabric, the guidelines is more thinner but still strong enough, and everything is a little bit more lightweight. You don't have the extra closing for the door and things like that. And I would say that the yellow label works up in the mountain if you are able to put it in a good spot. And I don't think they recommend the yellow label for high mountain tours, but yeah, I use them for the mountains also. I use other brands like Big Agnes, for example, up in the high mountains, and I promise you, the yellow label from Hilleberg is much more sturdy than the Big Agnes tents, for sure. This tent fit one adult and a dog, or one adult and a kid. If you are two person, then you should be in the beginning of your relation. I think it's better to look at the other tent they have in the yellow label, and that's Hilleberg Niak. I never tried it by myself, but it looks like it's Niak, but with two doors, one on each side, and that's really good. It's not so heavy either. I have used Hilleberg Niak. You can find a review of that at our channel, but the Hilleberg Niak is the red label tent. I use this as a solo tent, and it's a very nice solo tent. I have my sleeping mat, I have all my gear, I have my dog here, or if I'm not having a dog, I have more space for my gear because I carry a lot of camera gear, fishing gear, or gear. In this tent there is only two tiny pockets, and there is a rope here that I put here for hanging things for drying. But the pockets are very tiny. It's not the same thing as you have in the big Agnes, when you have more like shelf in the roof and pockets, and there I would say that big Agnes is really comfortable with all the storage areas. But so I don't know why Hilleberg don't put extra pockets. Maybe it's because they don't want weight on the tent. I don't know actually. So then we had to talk about the wind and this tent. When you have heavy wind, of course you don't want the wind on this side, because here you have the door. So then, or at least what I was trying first, is to take the wind from the back side. But what was happened then is that this big panel of fabric catch the wind, and you see, then you really need to have all this peg really good attached. And even if it's good attached, this will push the whole fabric into the other part of the tent. And you don't want the wind here, of course. So then we had to find another solution. So if I really can choose, what I have seen is that I want the wind here, on that side, because then I have the door protected and most of the wind comes on this pole. But I really want to protect this side from the wind. So if I had to choose, the wind here on that side. But even here, you see the fabric comes and touch the other one. So if you end up in the storm with this tent, you had to be able to pitch it really, really tough in the ground, and you had to tighten all these guy lines really hard to really keep the fabric tight, because otherwise you will get the fabric to slapping in and behave like a sail. Very often when you're looking at tent reviews, people are talking about the outer fabric, how strong it is and so on. But one of the really important thing that I have seen on tents, especially when you get some cheaper tents, is the zippers. The zipper breakdown. So I would say that when you go for cheap tents, zipper will be one of the first things that breaks down. But Hilleberg is not a cheap tent, and the zippers are really, really good. So for me, for example, I'm not the only one who uses this tent. It's also my customers who use it, and we have used it in the winter, we use it in the summer, and people are not used with the zippers. And I think that the zippers, they should be really, really high-end quality. And then, of course, the fabric is also very strong, both the flyer and the floor, for example, is very, very strong on the Hilleberg ones. So when we're talking about high-end equipment, this is a lot of money when you buy this tent. When you want to sell this tent, you get a lot of this money back. So you can use it for some years and then you sell it and you get some of the money back. If you buy some of this cheapy, crappy tent, low budget tent, you get nothing back. You had probably to throw it. So the cost of this tent is the difference between what you pay when you buy it and what you get when you sell it. But it's still a lot of money that you had to be able to have for the tent. And yeah, when you have the tent, you don't have the money. But when you sell the tent, you have the money again. But so you still need to have the money if you buy Hilleberg. But the cost is not super high in the end. So then we had to talk about ventilation and condensation, and that's my favorite subject. And on this tent you don't have this ventile on the top as you have on the Allak, for example. And I had to say I miss it. I really love that ventilation. But I also know that if you add that ventilation on top of this tent, it's a total different tent, it's a total different weight. This is a lightweight tent. If I want the ventilation on the top, I had to go for one of the more heavy ones. There is a reason why this is lightweight. So you don't have ventiles in the top, but you have, so you can open the door from the top a little bit, but you also have another interesting system for ventile in this tent. So this tent don't have any ventiles, but it still have ventilation. If you see here, there is space between the fabric and the ground. That's the ventilation. So all around, the flyer don't go down to the ground. And that gives this tent a really good ventilation if you just have a little bit of wind. And I have used it in summertime, in the autumn, I have used it in the winter. And of course, in some conditions, you get condensation, but you also very often don't get condensation. I don't know why, but this is not a condensed monster, in my opinion. You get condensation in all tents. I'm a little bit surprised because during the winter we use this tent as a solo tent for our customers, and then if people stay 2 and 2 together, they get a Namach 3 GT. I have made a review of that tent also. So the Namach 3 GT have a ventile on each side, and if you put it in the direction so the wind goes through it, you have an air stream through the whole tent the whole time, and that's super good for condensation. But this one, Niak, I think this one gets less condensation than Namach, and that's surprising me a little bit. But it's not made as a winter tent, we should remember that. But you can use it as a winter tent. So all over, I would say that this is a really, really nice tent. It's actually one of my favorite tents right now for summer hiking tours. A dome tent is easy to pitch, easy to move. It's very easy to handle. And every time when you put it up, it comes out in a good way. This is a 2-person tent, but it's a really perfect tent for 1 person and a dog, or a person with a lot of gear. So it's perfect if you want to spread out a lot of gear in the tent. And for me, it's important with a tent that if it's bad weather, should be able to spend 1 or 2 days in the tent, waiting for the heavy rain to stop or waiting for the storm to stop. But then I want a waterproof, wind-safe tent that I can really stay inside. And this is a good tent because I can stay in there, I can cook my food in there, and I can be there for a whole day just reading books or listen to podcasts and having my coffee and tea and food and whatever. And it's not the tiny cocoon where you can't move around. So this is a really nice tent if you want to spend a lot of time in the tent. And 1.7 kilo is not too much for a normal hiking trip. If you really try to be ultra lightweight, then you should go under 1 kilo, I guess. But for a tent like this, 1.7 kilo for a canoe tour, kayak tour, it's really, really, really okay. So one last thing about this tent is the bags. For a normal hiker, these bags are totally fine. For me, who using them for guests and having them in dog sled, then you get holes like this because these have probably been together with a snow shovel or something like that in a dog sled. And I will get new bags, more sturdy bags for these ones. And the same with the tent. You could have it in a lightweight compression bag or lightweight dry bag, because you see, you can really compress it. And if you take away the inner and the outer and separate them, you can have the inner tent always dry, packed in a dry bag. And the flyer is where the condensation stops, so that's the wet one with the rain and the condensation. So that's how you can do it. So I think that was all from me today. So if you want to see more videos like this, or if you want to see videos from the tour we actually are making, head over to the channel, give a thumbs up, subscribe and do that, because then YouTube algorithm give more of this type of content to you. And thank you for watching, thank you for supporting the channel. And feel free to leave a comment if there is anything you have a question about, if there is anything you know about this tent, feel free to share. It's really nice to read all the comments, and I really try to read all the comments. See you next video. Ciao!